you, Tara. I'm so glad to have you joining me in my garden today. Now that winter is well and truly over, I've been spending a lot of time out here and not as much time in my studio. Although I have been also prepping for the Winding Roads Art Tour, which is coming up the first weekend of June. If you're local, I'd love to see you there. I thought though that today would be a perfect day for a garden tour. After the long winter that we had, it just feels so wonderful to be able to be outside every day, to get my hands in the dirt, to be tending plants, to be delighting myself at every turn with what I'm planting and what I'm observing. And I'm hoping that I can share monthly tours with you of my garden so you can join me and watch how things progress. I've been working on a couple of big projects here, and we've been changing things around a little bit, getting rid of more grass. By the end of the gardening season, I'm hoping to have all the grass in our backyard gone. So let's walk around and I'll show you some of the things that I've been working on and some of the things that are bringing me so much joy.
The first thing you might notice entering my garden are the pots filled with begonias hanging on the house and garage. All of these were from the Amish greenhouses in our area, and they are bringing me so much joy. The colorful leaves on some and the flowers on others, including these fragrant ones. The variety is Fragrant Falls Peach, and it hangs right over the gate. I love having these little pops of color and joy throughout the garden, especially this early in the season before much is going on in my garden. It's so important that I craft a garden that delights me. Although I garden for so many reasons, for food, for the wildlife, as an extension of my home, I mostly garden for me, for my creativity, and to feed my soul. No matter what I grow or how successful it is, my garden, its quirks and flaws, delights me. Because gardening for me is a creative act. I want my space and everything within it to be joyful, fun, unique. Here I aim to please no one but myself. Scented geraniums like this peppermint with its beautiful fuzzy leaves and this rose are some of my favorite plants to grow. I love the fragrances and the variations in textures, shapes, sizes of the leaves. The tiny nutmeg and the citrusy variety with its beautiful flowers too. Fragrance is an essential part of my garden. I keep pots of those fragrant plants like the geraniums and this lemon verbena and pineapple sage close where I can smell them. Other plants like this lantana and salvia attract butterflies and hummingbirds, and that's another source of joy for me in the garden. Sometimes delight is a little more secret, like underneath this crumbling pillar. This is where I know some toads are living. The pillar is pretty ugly, but I love the fact that there are toads under there. I moved it just the other day and 2 of them hopped out. I quickly put it back and I'm going to leave it even though it's not pretty because I love the secret underneath. Again, for me, it's all about delight. The garden brings me joy in so many ways, sometimes unexpectedly. Like when I dug up this plastic bat the other day. I always want to be open to these sorts of joys. The details bring me joy, but so does the garden as a whole. So let's take a look around. My backyard is made up of a number of different spaces, patios and paths, garden beds, and containers. Along the north fence is a newly cleared area. I dug out a rose and a gooseberry that weren't doing so well. I added a structure, and this year it will support my tomatoes. I started seeds indoors under grow lights, and here are my seedlings before I planted them. I'm growing 5 varieties. 4 of them are here: Moscovich, chocolate sprinkles, Cherokee carbon, and green zebra. The other one is a yellow patio tomato that I've planted in a pot. My garden is always transforming and evolving and changing, which is another joy of working in this space. Right now, there are still a lot of open spaces while I wait for direct sown seeds and self-seeded plants to grow. I also have more seeds to plant and more seedlings waiting to go into some of the empty spots. I've gotten rid of the grass here this spring, connecting one mulched area with another. I added this round fire pit garden last year, and this year I'm excited to watch the sweet peas and snapdragons take over the space. I think it's going to be very beautiful. I'm still feeling out the space, but I did add one new garden bed, and I'm trying to think what other kinds of containers or garden beds I'd like to add to the space. We mowed the grass and I put down cardboard and mulch, which is what I did in the other areas. I have one area of grass left in the garden and we're getting rid of it this year. Along the back of the house, we're adding a deck, and the window that doesn't have a window box on it is going to be changed to a door, and that room is going to become my studio. I'm so excited to have my studio walk out directly into the garden. I want to point out a few more details that are bringing me joy, one of which is my peach tree. It was filled with flowers earlier this spring. This is Contender, and it is the 5th year that I've been growing it. Last year it had so much fruit. Those beautiful flowers are now sweet little baby peaches. Directly beneath the peach tree, I have some very pretty buried treasure strawberries. I planted 2 of them last year and I added a couple more this year. They are also a favorite of Fiona, and she discovered how tasty they were last year in the garden, and it really cracked me up watching her try to get those fruits off the plant. I ate plenty of them and I didn't mind sharing a few with her. I also don't mind sharing with the birds. Other fruit in my garden includes this raspberry shortcake raspberry plant, and it's doing really well. This is the 2nd or maybe 3rd year, I can't remember. Last month, I think I called my columnar apples naughty. They are branching out a lot, and the plants seem to be doing very well, but still no flowers this year. Last year I think there were a couple, but I have not had any fruit. That's not true of my cherry. This is Juliet, and it was filled with beautiful white blossoms in the spring, and it is now filled with beautiful little baby cherries. I'm hoping to have a good harvest. I had lots of cherries last year, and it looks like I'll have a lot this year too. Beneath my cherry bush is my comfrey plant, and I'm planning to use it this year to create some fertilizer tea. I've read about that and I'm excited to try it. Some of my empty spots in my garden are waiting for my dahlias. I pre-sprouted them under grow lights inside. Some of the tubers were saved from last year and some are new this year. They're growing really well and I'm so excited for the flowers. 2 of them are going to go in this space by the back gate where I have planted snapdragons that I grew from seed, and my sensation honeysuckle is growing along the gate. It's going to be a very pretty corner of the garden. Here is the view from that corner. Directly ahead is the long bed against the south fence, which is a fun work in progress. In the middle is a stump from the maple tree that was taken down a few years ago, and I love having flowers on top of there. My little homemade fairy door is a little bit of whimsy that brings me joy. It'll soon be hidden behind all of the plants. One of the most beautiful things in the garden this spring has been my little species tulips. This is Badalinii Bright Gem, and it's the second spring for these. They, according to the description from John Sheepers, where I bought them, they're supposed to be more peachy, orangey, but mine appear to be quite yellow, which is fine. They're very beautiful. They seem to be multiplying and they just bring me so much joy, even if they aren't exactly the color that I thought they would be. They are definitely a bright gem in the garden. Other bright spots in the garden right now are my beautiful columbine plants, which are all beginning to come into bloom right now, and my gorgeous bleeding hearts. They are so beautiful, and this is their prime time. So many of these spring flowers are ephemeral. They're here and then they're gone. So it's so important that I take the time to savor them while they're here, because they're not going to show up again until next year. Violas are more of my favorite plants, and I like to grow them in the holes of my cinder blocks and my cinder block raised beds. This spring has been fairly cold, and so the self-seeded violas have been very slow to show up. Do you spot some of the little baby violas here with the self-seeded purple poppies? And do you see what's growing here? These are radishes. And yes, I said in my blog post that I'm not growing radishes again this year, but I couldn't help myself. So a lot of my beds look like this, a mixture of self-seeded plants and also plants that I directly sowed into the garden. They have been fairly slow to sprout this year because it's been fairly cold, especially at night. I also grow some plants under grow lights and then transplant the seedlings into the garden. This also helps with one of my other problems, which is squirrels digging in the garden. So because of the cold and the squirrels, instead of direct sowing some of what I would, I am growing them inside. I want to share one last detail that is really exciting me this spring, and that is these iris. They were a gift in the mail from one of my students. Thank you, Leslie. They've been growing in the garden a couple of years now, and before I ever had this clump of iris, I was convinced that I couldn't grow iris. I had some dye in my Cleveland garden, I had some dye in this garden, and so I didn't have much hope. But these, oh, they're going to be glorious, and I can't wait to see what color they are. So gardening is often about changing your mind. I find that I evolve and grow just about as much as my garden does.
Thanks so much for joining me in the garden today. I hope you enjoyed getting a tour of my happy place, and I hope that it brought you joy. I'd love to hear about your own garden, your own project, and the plants and flowers that you are growing as well. Thanks again, and I will see you next time.